Okay, we are running. Go ahead and talk a little bit.
Hello, Greg.
Hello, Keith. Holy smokes, this is so weird. All right. Well, it's been a long day, and I'm excited to be here with you in person.
In my classroom.
This is just absurdly bizarre how many hours that we've spent together virtually, and this has just been such a weird day. I've driven from Buffalo to Highland, Indiana. And it's been kind of an interesting journey just being out on the highway, staring at the highway after so many months of just essentially being in my 6 block radius in my neighborhood.
It was surreal to pull up to my school parking lot and to see you already waving at me.
Yeah, yeah. And then something that jumps out is that you said it's very weird that to be with somebody who's taller than me. And I am in fact taller.
He's tall, people.
Yeah, I'm a giant. It's real crazy. So, but here we are. It's been quite a day, and I'm glad to be here.
Well, I applaud and appreciate your stamina for being able to make that haul.
Yeah.
And then want to sit down and make a bonus episode of sorts, an Ask Me Anything episode.
I think that the opportunity to do this, and it's been such a crazy week, so I didn't have time to actually think about a song for this week. And I was thinking well, if I'm going to be going through there and we're going to meet up, we might as well do something
different.
Yeah, something different. And we'll get back to the songs and everything really soon. But I just decided we couldn't pass up this opportunity, especially since I have all this fancy schmancy recording here that I've got my mics here. I've got my Zoom H4n field recorder that I don't really get to use very much. So the fact of being able to use this stuff that kind of just sits in a box in my house is kind of special to me.
It feels very gonzo journalism
Yeah.
of sorts. Like we're sitting in the back of a venue,
Right.
And you've whipped this stuff out of a bag or a messenger bag, and we're doing an impromptu interview.
I'll tell you exactly why I bought this recorder. It's kind of a weird story. So on my other podcast, Classical Ideas, I interview people about religion, and the Cro-Mags were coming to Buffalo with Hatebreed and Obituary. And I DM'd John Joseph, and I was like, hey, would you be interested in doing an interview about Hare Krishna? And we can tie in music, and we can talk about all these things over the years. We can talk about Age of Quarrel. And he was like, yeah, that sounds great. So I went out and I invested in this portable recorder that I could get a really good recording of. Because I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to interview John Joseph. This is super crazy. And then he bailed on me at the last second. I was literally sitting in the lobby of Town Ballroom in Buffalo after Cro-Mags' set, frantically DMing him. And then he just never opened my messages again. So it was a real bummer. And I never really found out what happened. So I bought this recorder it's $200 to interview John Joseph. So we get to use it instead.
It's also somewhat funny to think of the difference between interviewing John Joseph with this and then interviewing me.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I'm here in your element. This is so crazy. And you've got a nice view out here. You've got a nice courtyard. It's a nice sunny day. You got trees to look at. And whenever I'm in a classroom and I think about the job of teaching, I think about how most, but not all teachers have windows, and how many people who go to jobs every day around the world who don't have anything to look at outside of their workspace. And that I feel like that's one of the things I've liked about my teaching jobs the most is I seem to have good views whenever I'm looking out the window of my classrooms.
I've appreciated it more over time. You can see the magnolia is just about to bloom out here every year. A few different families of wood ducks lay eggs right here in this courtyard.
It's fabulous.
And it's something that the students will, once they hatch and once they start walking around, they all notice. And so we always take some time to look out the windows and to watch and just observe. And then eventually one of the members of the custodial staff, they'll set up 2x4s in the hallway and then just get a stick and walk them out of the courtyard because there's no exit from there. They're stuck and there's not enough food and water, so they have to get them out.
Yeah.
So then he will walk them through the building, through the back to a creek, and it happens every single year.
Oh my gosh.
It's a fun tradition.
Oh my gosh. And I bet the science teachers in the department really plays it up as well, as far as like, hatching of eggs and biology lessons and things like that too,
It's a great observable piece of information and education right here out the window.
Yeah. And so what's really funny is on a couple episodes ago that we did, we talked about Portage La Prairie.
Mm-hmm.
And in a huge portion of that episode, we talked about the region, right?
Right.
Where you live,
Northwest Indiana.
and where we currently are. And as I was driving through northern Indiana today, like the road that I was driving in on, the 80/90, runs right along the state line of Indiana and Michigan, all the way across the whole state. And as you get into this northwestern Indiana space, the landscape becomes so distinct and jarring and sharp. And like as you're driving through like the Gary area, you start to see like fumes in the air. Like I was seeing like plumes of cloud and smoke and like emissions or whatever. And it was just such an interesting drive in, how you see the landscape shift from like farms and fields to like giant piles of coal and, like vandalized plants that are like in varying stages of operation. And it's such a specific place, I feel like,
Most people think of Indiana and they think of probably corn
Yeah.
or agriculture, which it is.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of the land mass is for commercial farming. But where I live is just so heavily based in industry
Yeah.
and steel, oil refineries. And if all you got to do is drive along the toll road into Chicago to get a glimpse that it looks, it's the Rust Belt. It is the Rust Belt through and through.
Yeah. It's really fascinating because like Buffalo, where I live, has got such a specific history as far as the steel industry goes. There's a huge factory there called Bethlehem Steel, which shut down and essentially like null and voided the economy of Buffalo for a long time. I know that Keith Buckley from Every Time I Die has done a ton of interviews about the collapse of Buffalo's industry around Bethlehem Steel and how that has like reverberated throughout the city for several decades now. And I was driving in and I was like, man, this feels like driving on the 190 in South Buffalo because you can see the industry, you can see the shuttered factories and things like that that are essentially just withering and like decaying over time now. And there were so many similarities to where I just came from and where I just came to on the other side of, I drove the entire Lake Erie shoreline today. And then I drove across Michigan, and now I'm at the southern tip of Lake Michigan. So it's just been quite a day.
Still on the Great Lakes, super heavy industry. Yeah,
Yep.
Weirdly at home, but slightly different.
It's so bizarre. So anyway, so here we are, and we're going to do something a little strange that we've never done before, and that is talk about some listener-submitted questions, which I have only very lazily glanced at, and I don't even have them in front of me, and you do. So how do you
I
think?
have some. I hope I have them all. If
How
I
do you-
missed your question, I apologize.
Yeah. So how do you think we should go about this, Keith? Because this is something that we've never really done before.
Well, how about I start off and we'll read through some, and then each of us will share our thoughts and answers.
Okay, sounds good. Why don't you go ahead and throw something out there, and we'll chat about it for a bit.
All right, my first caveat is that if I mispronounce your name, I apologize.
Yeah.
Just be sure to let me know, and I will remember for the future.
Fabulous.
So the first is from Michael Torseth. He asked, what other bands do you consider to be most like Propaganda, especially musically?
Okay. Do you want to start with that one?
You take this one, Greg.
Okay, so a major one that jumps out is a band, I believe they're from a Scandinavian country. I think they're from Finland, and they're called One Hidden Frame.
Ah.
They did a record on Bird Attack a couple years ago, and I know that One Hidden Frame is recording right now. And they have that record on Bird Attack. I can't remember what the name of the record is called, but it's easily identifiable on Spotify. It's got like a black and white cover, And that one's really, really great as far as like a Propaganda-esque kind of style of music. So that would be like the big one that jumps out at me. Some other things like so for me, like I feel like that's the biggest one right now. Yeah, do you have any examples that jump out at you?
Nothing that, if you talk about certain grind or black metal bands to where it's like, oh, if you like this, you're absolutely going to like this. I don't know if I could really think of perfect matchups like for fans of the stickers on a record. But you could also think about this differently throughout the band's discography because, what might sound like Less Talk versus Empires versus supporting cast. But I guess a lot of times what I will recommend to people is a Wilhelm Scream. Maybe some of the earlier Propaganda stuff, even like maybe Bigwig.
Yep.
Lyrically and in terms of political sentiment and social ideas, even though sonically it's not the same, I also think Strike Anywhere.
Yep.
Right? So some of the bands that have toured with them, though they don't necessarily sound the same, that they operate in somewhat of the same, universe or like musical microcosm. But just especially later on, it's far more difficult to find a band that blends, kind of proggy rock with thrash and other subgenres of metal, but with also still some sprinkling of punk.
Yeah.
I just don't know if I really know many bands that sound like Failed States.
Right. Well, another example that kind of jumps out at me is the band Atlas Losing Grip. They have the singer from Atlas Losing Grip is Rodrigo, who plays in Satanic Surfers. And I don't really think Satanic Surfers is super like Propaganda, but I think that Atlas Losing Grip ties in those like 80s metal elements that kind of traverse those lines. I'm also looking at the Spotify right now for Propaganda, and it says fans also like, and the first recommendation is Strike Anywhere.
Yeah.
So they're such a wonderful band. Some others that are listed are Good Riddance, Face to Face, A Wilhelm Scream, Strung Out, Lagwagon, 88 Fingers of Louis Pulley, Lawrence Arms, 10-Foot Pole, Bouncing Souls, and Bigwig. And so many of those bear virtually no resemblance to Propaganda.
Yeah.
And so it really is a shame that I'm not seeing bands like Torch and Mastodon and Baroness on that list for fans also like, because Propaganda is so much bigger than just this one particular sound that they're so completely lumped in with from the 90s that they've that they have transcended so many times over at this point. So anyway, that's my gripe on the fans also like Spotify list.
Well, if you listeners think of anything that we might have missed, be sure to share, because
for sure
it's definitely music that if we don't know of or we didn't think of, share via social media.
Well, hold on though, but the thing is that I just thought about as well is the fact that the two bands that I listed, Atlas Losing Grip and One Hidden Frame, are both Scandinavian bands. Which I don't know why. I feel like that's an interesting coincidence as well. And I also know that Randy, who are huge friends of Propaganda's, they're also Scandinavian. So there's like this interesting Scandinavian Propaganda overlap a little bit that I'm kind of like just pondering now at the moment for some reason.
Yeah, interesting. Well, Greg, here's the next one. Here's from Last Believer Pod.
Wonderful. I love that show.
They asked 5-band bill. Propaganda is the headliner. Who else is on the bill? And I love that the comments immediately were like, 5 bands, that's too many. We're old. We're going to be bent over, rubbing our knees. Our backs are going to be sore, sitting on the ground. But I think I could probably still do 5 bands.
If I had to, I would deal with it. But like, I never want to be in a music venue past 10:15 p.m. again as long as I live. Like, I had knee surgery in 2015. I had back surgery in 2017. And I'm just like so over it. Like, I remember going to shows at the Creepy Crawl in St. Louis in like 1999. And like one time I went and saw Midtown, that Drive-Thru Records band, and there were 5 local openers. And I will never forget that show as long
Wait,
as I
in
lived.
addition to the touring
In
package?
addition to Midtown.
Ooh, yeah, that's no good.
No, it was just Midtown
Oh, okay,
doing
okay.
like a one-off date
Yeah.
for a headlining show when they were supporting somebody else on tour, and there were 5 local openers.
Yeesh.
Midtown went on at 12:15 a.m. The headliner that I went there to see, I had been there since 6 o'clock.
Right.
And so I never want to be, I want to be in bed, man, at 10:30 every night. And if that means that there's a show in downtown Buffalo that I can leave at 10:15 p.m., I'm in bed at 10:30.
Yeah.
I literally drive my 14-minute drive home, and I am in bed less than 60 seconds later. But I want to give you the chance to do your 5-band bill. But here's an interesting problem.
Okay.
The bands that I want to see Propaganda with, several of them are probably more popular fan base wise. So it wouldn't I'm going to caveat to say that my bill that I will likely wind up saying is not a realistic billing in any way.
Gotcha.
Because Propaganda would not headline over some of the bands that I'm going to say.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But I want you to go first.
Well, mine is probably the opposite because most of what comes to mind, I can think of bands that have already played with them.
Okay.
And it just seems to fit in with their sound and ethos. So I'm going to say War on Women.
Okay.
Also Alien Boys, since that record, that Alien Boys record has been just huge for me in the last couple months.
So good.
After you interviewed Aaron. I'm also going to say Strike Anywhere, which
Okay.
again is kind of maybe a little bit of a cop-out. Comeback Kid, because I love Comeback Kid. And I'm going to say local Chicago Latino Fury hardcore band La Armada, who I've seen open for Propaganda twice, but I think I just associate all of those bands with them. So it would seem familiar, and it wouldn't be any glaring difference. So it's not like my 5 favorite bands, but it's just fans I think would all fit together super well.
I absolutely love La Armada.
Yeah.
Their record, so I bought their record on vinyl during this pandemic, and I have listened to it so many times. And I followed the La Armada van theft story on Twitter
Right.
very, very closely, and I do believe that they did wind up getting their van back. But huge, huge shout out to La Armada. We are in their territory right now, just south of Chicago. So that is so awesome. And obviously, hello to Aaron from the Rebel Spell and Alien Boys. Fantastic band, incredible record. I know you've been promoting that record a lot on Twitter lately.
It's so good.
So good. And you can get the vinyl too. Like, I have the vinyl. Did you get the vinyl?
Yes, I did.
Awesome. That's so good. I'm so glad to support bands like that who come on the show and have these amazing projects. It's just such an honor. Okay, so are you ready for mine?
Let's go.
The first band that I would like to see open the show is the band Blood Command from Bergen, Norway. They are absolutely amazing. They have an EP called Afraid of Water, and it is truly, truly fantastic. It's like if Refused leaned into their dancey side
Oh, okay.
a little bit more. And they are really fantastic. They also have an album called Cult Drugs, which is just so good. So if
Yeah.
anybody out there hasn't heard Blood Command, they are hands down one of my favorite bands
New
of
to
the,
me.
of
I'll
the
have to
last
check 'em
year.
out.
Fantastic. Like, you will love them. So the next one that I would want to see is Svalbard.
Oh, I knew it.
I'm so sorry.
No, that's great. No, great.
Everybody knows that I am obsessed with Svalbard. And it just pains me that, like, Svalbard and Blood Command are both European bands, and the prospect of seeing them is so low for the foreseeable future.
Right.
But, man, Svalbard is absolutely amazing. And they're from Bristol in the UK. So that's my second one. And I know that Serena Cherry, the lead singer of Svalbard, has a new black metal solo project coming out, which I know you've been checking out too.
It's good.
Yeah. So that's my second. My third is Baroness. Ever since, so I've seen Baroness a bunch of times, and I love them. I think that Gina Gleason is an incredible guitarist. I think that their drummer, who is the drummer for Trans Am, I think his name is Sebastian. He is such a special drummer. He's a left-handed drummer, and I just like love his physicality behind the drum set. Like he looks interesting while he's playing. So I'm a huge fan of Baroness. And the reason I'm saying Baroness is because when Jason Hall from Western Addiction was on our show and we talked about Life at Disconnect, he's like, I want to see Propaganda playing with Baroness. And I was like, yes. Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. And like, it got me thinking about like the band Against Me as well. Against Me for like the last decade has done so many tours where the packages are so wide ranging in sound.
Right.
Like I think I saw Against Me one time with Murder by Death and Mastodon.
Oh, weird.
And so like I love it when you have a huge range of sounds.
That's super cool.
So like so far we've got Blood Command, who's like super dancey but like super heavy as well, and then you got Svalbard, who is just like a ripping band, and then Baroness, which if you haven't heard Baroness, definitely give it a shot. So my fourth band is Unleash the Archers.
Yeah.
And I am
Nice.
really, really excited by my lineup of bands. I've been thinking about that question a lot today. But Unleash the Archers, my favorite song by Unleash the Archers is 10,000 Against One.
Oh, it's so good.
Off of their Apex record. 10,000 against one.
It's fist pounding
Dude.
metal. You can't listen to that and not pound your fist.
And Brittany Slays, I don't care who I anger with this. Brittany Slays is the best singer in metal. I will die on that mountain.
I have no argument against that.
There you go. And I know, and the thing is, like, you are so much more well versed in metal than me. But like for me, like, Brittany Slays is where it's at right now.
Yeah.
So anyway, those are my bands.
Well, I love the kind of the more realistic, right? If there were going to be this massive festival
Yep.
or a tour package,
Yeah.
but also more of the hand-picked superfan one. So
Yeah.
So two different versions there.
Yeah, and I'm excited about my picks too because I've got a worldly array. We've got
Yeah.
Baroness from the U.S. We've got Blood Command from Norway. We've got Svalbard from the UK, and we got Unleash the Archers from Vancouver in Canada. So I'm feeling very international about my my lineup here.
All right, let's go to our next question.
Groovy.
This is Grazie from Brazil.
Hi,
She actually
Grazie.
has a few questions for us. Greg, she asked first about song lyrics from Propaganda that we don't like.
Yeah. This is a hard question. So I got an. I know that that Chris is very self-reflective about the lyrics that he's written in the past.
Right.
And, I'm curious about your thoughts. Do you have any that really jump out at you?
One that comes to mind, I think, and I've mentioned this to one of our listeners, Matt from Chicago
Yeah.
on Twitter. The if you're dumb enough to vote, then
Yeah.
you're dumb enough to believe them. Like, I get the purpose of that, and I get being antagonistic and pointing out how flawed the system is. But for me, as a social studies teacher, as a person who doesn't have like his right to vote, like even though where I live, it's the Texas of the Midwest,
Right.
I don't really have my vote. My vote is not threatened.
Yeah.
And there's really no chance of my vote really being taken away or oppressed or, there's really no opportunity for me to be disenfranchised, really,
Mhm.
not yet, at least. So I think it comes with incredible privilege to say that voting doesn't matter. I understand that it's flawed. And I mentioned this in my classroom because students will ask me when they learn about the Electoral College and gerrymandering and voter suppression, past and present, and they'll ask, why do we vote if it doesn't matter?
Yeah.
And that's such a hard question to answer because, well, it's loaded, it's built into it, this value judgment that it doesn't. And I explained to them that I can't tell them that they absolutely have to. Like it's definitely a personal choice. But for me, teaching history and seeing the oppression and repression of minority vote throughout U.S. history, again, past and present.
Yeah.
I scroll through a Twitter thread from historian Kevin Cruz, where he documents activists who were murdered for attempting to help other people vote.
Right.
And I share that to explain that yes, it is a flawed system, that there are far better ways that we could represent people's interest and their voice in the U.S. We don't have it, but I know absolutely the answer is not voting.
Right.
And that's what I try to best explain to them and say that's from my perspective. So whether or not Chris and the rest of the band literally meant that, or if it was more to be somewhat antagonistic and to take away, this whole hey, I voted.
Yeah.
Which people think they can vote and then that's it, right? Their participation in politics and the communities that they live doesn't matter. All they have to do is show their sticker and then not worry about doing anything else. So I don't know exactly what the intents are with that, but I think that one was like I definitely sang along to it in my early 20s.
Sure.
And even though I voted, but that one. That one feels a little different now, learning and knowing a little bit more.
Yeah. And I'm definitely going to echo you on that one. And I've talked on our episode about things that I don't like about This Might Be Satire.
Right.
And for me, if you're dumb enough to vote, you're dumb enough to believe them, is another one of those things to where you really have to be such a smart and analytical person. Like, you're being asked to know possibly a lot more than you can know whenever you're hearing words like that.
Yeah.
And so there could be such a mixed message that a listener would get by hearing those words. And like, I even got it this past year during the election. I wore a propaganda shirt when I went to vote for president this past fall. And I posted a picture of that, I think, on social media, and then somebody responded with that lyric, like in the comments underneath the picture, and I was just like, I just disagree.
Yeah.
And I know that we have so many problems with gerrymandering, and like voting is so inaccessible, and it's becoming more inaccessible to so many people. But I mean, so that's a problem that I have. A major one that jumps out. I'm still wrestling around how I think about the song. I'm not going to swear in your school. It just feels wrong. F machine.
Yeah, right.
On How to Clean Everything, and that's one that I'm wrestling with. We have an interview recorded for that episode, and I'm still trying to figure out how I think about that song, because in the interview we started to get into some of the problems with the lyrics in there that we were genuinely unsure about. Like, we genuinely did not know how we felt about a couple of like ways that the words come across in that song. So that's a big one. I talked about this in the Humane Meat episode. I don't particularly like that they specifically chose Sandor Katz.
Yeah.
And even though his book totally grossed me out, like the writing in that book like almost made me throw up on that episode. I'm not even joking. When I was reading that, I was like so nauseous. It was disgusting. But when I think about the unbelievable abuse that animals have endured at the hands of human beings, and the outright cruelty that we inflict upon the species that share this earth with us, I just don't think that Sandor Katz is like the biggest problem out there.
Right.
So that's an issue that I have. Another one that I have is I really don't care for the lyrics to Haile Selassie on how to clean everything, and on the I'd Rather Be Flag Burning 10-inch, because whenever he's like F religion over and over and over, I'm like, boring.
Yeah.
Because like I like religion like a lot. Like, I have a whole podcast with 200 episodes where I interview scholars and practitioners of religion and Zen masters and like like Hindu priests and like Jains and everybody. And I think that the stories of religion is so much more than just reducing it to just saying, well, F that. And so that's another one that I really tremendously dislike. Like, I think that I'm sort of excited about doing an episode about that song, but like, if like, I feel myself procrastinating that episode over and over and over and over because I'm just like, oh boy, I just really don't like that lyric. So that's a nice preview for our Haile Selassie episode, I think.
That's a great example, Greg, because probably 10 years ago, I subscribed to the whole religion poisons everything.
Oh, for sure.
and
Christopher
the
Hitchens, God is not great. Yeah,
right.
read it all.
I think if it was maybe finding something that confirms some things that I believe, but with that,
Yeah.
it also included just vast oversimplifications, historically, culturally, philosophically, and to write things off, to ignore the impact of, just within my own subject, the positive impact of religion in U.S. history, whether that's the civil rights movement or other events for social change. I think that's just a gross oversimplification. So that was one that I loved to sing along to in my car in my early 20s. And now I'm just like, nah. Well, I don't remember the last time I listened to that song.
And like, I'm very sympathetic to a lot of the messages found within that song as well. Like, if you go to my Classical Ideas podcast, and I think it's episode number 12, and I just posted episode 200 the other day, so it's like so crazy. But if you go to like number 12, it is a conversation with a Palestinian American living in diaspora in the U.S., and I interviewed her about her family's ancestral land in the West Bank and her thoughts on the occupation of the West Bank by the Israeli government and military. So if you want to hear me in conversation with somebody in regards to like Palestinian occupation, you can go find that on Classical Ideas like way early on. It's like episode number 11 or 12 or something like that.
And now, Greg, don't forget, if any listeners didn't hear Chris's episode on Patreon about this, to where he explained the context and the motivations for writing, which he doesn't try to use that to apologize for, but just to explain and to elucidate the song and its history itself.
Yeah.
And it's important to note that, of course, he has some mixed feelings about the lyrics and even ultimately changing them for a later version.
I think that he may have referred to it as borderline racist.
Right.
Like, it was a really striking rebuke of his own ideas, which I find to be one of the most appealing and attractive qualities that human beings can possess.
I was not expecting the things that he talked about that he said were problematic. Like some things I thought like, oh yeah, oversimplifying religion.
Yeah.
But in more specific terms, what he talked about in detail, I was like, wow, I was totally not expecting this. So give that episode a listen if you haven't.
For sure.
And Grazie has one more question, Greg. She asked, what is your favorite thing that you've learned while researching for an episode or preparing for the show?
Oh boy. So this may require several different answers as I think back on the episodes that we've done. The biggest one that jumps out right away for me is the research that we did for the Bringer of Greater Things episode, where I learned about the stories of Starlight Tours, which is essentially police officers picking up First Nations men in the middle of the night in the Canadian winter, driving them out into the wilderness and leaving them on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere. That's a huge one for me, is Bringer of Greater Things and those stories. Because I lived in Saskatoon for 2 years.
Right.
And I never really went deeper on that. But like it really shades my memories of living in that town now. Do you have one that jumps out at you?
Yeah, Mate Ka. I think the amount of information, like as many times as I had heard that song and knew broad strokes about what it was about, but not really further information or further research, and really immersing myself into documentaries and articles and as much as I could find for free for 2.5 weeks to prepare for that one, because you and I felt so much pressure. That one really felt like the song that I was listening to before the episode was completely different from the song that I listened to when I hear it now after.
Mm-hmm.
It just means so much more.
Awesome. Keith, something that I'm wondering about, a question that I have off the top of my head is, do you have any favorite interviews that you've done? Because I essentially recruited you off of the internet and latched onto you, and I said, I just have a feeling that we're going to do this show. And like we talked about it for, 6-7 months before we actually did it, but I've essentially turned you into an interviewer against your will. And I'm wondering if you have any experiences of being drawn into this project that really stand out at you so far.
Yeah, Greg. Yeah, it's really funny to think back to you and I in Kevin Gannon's tweet mentions.
Yes.
And us kind of going back and forth and like, oh, I like your failed states banner. And
I still want Kevin on the show, by the way.
Right. And it building from there, and then all the way back to over a year ago this year, so at the beginning of 2020, I ordered 2 of the album posters that were re-released, and I got 2 versions of, was it Potemkin? They sent me 2 versions of Potemkin rather than 1 failed states and 1 Potemkin, so I sent you one before we started the podcast, and then it seemed like that kind of ended up snowballing into this, but oh geez, I mean, I don't know, there are so many examples, because I was really dreading talking about Ska Sucks, but then talking to Adam Sprinson about it, and his insight and humor and his observations about the ideas of authenticity in music, he brought an angle that I totally wasn't expecting, and then you were able to build on with the bonus episode where you revisited that with Aaron Carnes.
Yeah.
Chris Deutsch and Heather Mayer, being able to address my professional interests in teaching and in history, because for me, it didn't just feel like having a conversation about a song. It was pedagogical, it was being able to talk with academic historians in a way that inform my practices in the classroom. So that definitely served, a dual purpose. And then, just being able to interview Sami Zayn with sweaty palms, and while he seemed perhaps just as nervous as I was, but he was so excited. And John Darnielle, dude, again, our dream, he was my dream. I mentioned before, my dream guest before we started the show, and we had him on by episode 6, but even, the revelations that you have during an interview, talking to Kyle Bailey about failed Imagineers, and starting to understand something that I had missed listening to this song for already a few years. So those are just some of the thoughts, but each one of them having brought something new and insightful to the song, to the lyrics, to the music that I just hadn't considered before.
Yeah, and first of all, we have to give huge shout-outs to Chris Hanna, who's on Duplicate Keys.
Right.
Todd Kowalski, who's on Dark Matters. Sulin Hago, who has been on Tertium Non Datur, Only Good Fascist is a Very Dead Fascist, and Purina Hall of Fame. So Sulin's been on 3 times. David Gillis, the Beeve, has been on Woe Is Me, and he was on Cut Into the Earth, so I'm so grateful to the band for their interest. John Darnielle was crazy. I remember sitting there on Skype with you on a call where I gave John Darnielle the dummy phone number that I set up to link to my Skype account so that he could call in from his cell phone. And we were sitting there is he going to call? Is he going to call? I remember it like it was yesterday. So that's a huge one. Rob and Joe from Sacrifice. Oh, yeah. Dude, crazy. Frank Turner, Brendan Kelly, Jen Fiorentino. I'm just scrolling literally through the episodes right now on Spotify, and I'm I can't even believe that this all happened.
And how lucky that I am that I didn't even mention talking to Todd and the Beeve and Sue Lynn.
Oh, and Kent Kowalski,
And-
Todd's
yeah,
brother.
And each of those interviews, no joke, that I was pretty much in tears thanking them for, their years of music and ideas and information that they've been able to bring into my life, like knowingly or unknowingly, that each of those was just an opportunity that I was so lucky to be able to have.
I think that my favorite interview, though, like pound for pound that I did that I learned the most was Lauren Corman on Nailing Descartes
Yeah.
to the Wall. That was such a tour de force, jam-packed, full of information hour that I spent with Lauren. Like, absolutely mind-blowing how she was just dropping it left and right on that episode. So thank you. Huge shout-out to Dr. Lauren Corman. That was fabulous. All right, what do we got next?
How about from Corey Costanzo? He asked,
Dr. Corey, the orthodontist out in California. What's up, buddy?
was Propagandy the right band name choice for the band that was destined to become the greatest band ever? We all love the name, but do we love it because it's truly a great name or just because they're so great?
I think that those of us who love it because it's them.
The association.
Yes. And I also, it's really funny. Like, if you go on, like, there's this dude in Canada named Eric Alper, and he has, like, these series of tweets that he, like, mechanically posts every now and then where they go viral.
Yeah.
And they go viral every time. But one of them, he's always like, what is the worst band name? And every single time people will say Propagandy. And like, I never respond to those because, like, I don't want to be like, oh, you're wrong. Because then they're going to be like, oh, well, you're just saying that just
Fanboy.
because. But, like, I really don't know. Do you know what I mean? I don't really know how to explain the name. Like, if people, like,
Right.
like, if, like, my cousin was asking me, or, like, I don't really precisely know. So maybe it's not a great name. I don't know if the band even likes it. But, it is the name of the band, and I don't really have a good answer.
Right. It feels like something that was like a filler name for a song that they just kind of stuck with if it's supposed to be like a play on words. But the play on words perhaps doesn't mean a whole lot other than maybe they're addressing social and political propaganda, but, through peaceful means and promoting peace. I don't know. It's not my favorite band name,
Right.
but I also think there are far worse ones.
Sure.
No one's ever really asked about it. Like, if anything, someone might see a shirt and say, "Oh yeah, that band rules," but no one's ever said, "What's that mean?"
Yeah.
Maybe the exploding alien head from the Failed States LP, that artwork that's on the back, people might say, what on earth is on your shirt? But they don't really ask about the name.
Yeah.
But I think the association, I think the fact that it kind of stuck, maybe it has taken on its own meaning itself by the band's message,
Yep.
their activism, their musical identity, and how unique they are in these different scenes where they don't really seem to fit in, but they're revered by
Yeah.
people from the metal and punk and hardcore scenes, which is so interesting to think, like,
Right.
universally not accepted by the fans per se, but like most of my favorite bands listen to Propagandy.
Yep. And, if I think about band names that are way worse, Hoobastank, Trapped, Nickelback,
Right.
way worse. So, it's just one of those things to where it's like, are you going with the propaganda aspect?
Right.
Or are you going with Gandhi, the person, and then, taking on all of the, potentially problematic things about the history of Gandhi, the human being? So, there's a lot in the name that is worthy of dissection and discussion. And I feel like maybe someday, like if we're like going to do like another bonus episode, maybe we could do like a dissection of the name in a little more detail.
All right, we got another question from Chris. Chris asks, what sticker comes to mind with the lyric, Strive for something more than a faded sticker on a skateboard.
Well, first thing that does spring to mind is all of the skateboards that my friends rode in middle school. So, like, I'm picturing, the Powell board with like the skull on it that a bunch of my friends had when I was a kid. I'm thinking about all these like skateboard brands and things like that. I'm thinking about like some of those old skate videos. Like I used to watch a bunch of Rodney Mullen's videos and stuff like that. So whenever somebody asks me that question, what springs to mind, something more than a faded sticker on a skateboard, is like I'm so uncreative that like I literally do just think about skateboards.
Yeah. I'm not a skateboarder. I was never a skateboarder.
I wasn't
I'm
either.
the most unathletic
I couldn't do it.
you'll ever meet.
I think our center of gravity's too high.
Right.
I know that Tony Hawk is super tall as well, but he's also
Yeah.
just a total freak of nature.
Yeah, he doesn't count.
Yeah.
Greg, I think my answer for this one is a little different. I guess what comes to mind is the idea of people with stickers or flyers or T-shirts like anti-Bush in the 2000s, and how prominent that was, and how that anti-Bush sentiment seemed to be either trendy, opportunistic, or just a way to sell records or T-shirts. And what seems to be the erasure of the absolute human rights catastrophe that was his 8 years in office, because someone is at least vocally or visually more egregious in the form of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
That we seem to give a pass, like you said, to George W. Bush. So while not a band or nothing really related to skateboarding itself, it seemed to be like people jumping on the bandwagon to be strongly and vehemently and visibly, of course, anti-Bush, and then willing to give them a mulligan because of everything that Trump has said and done.
I love that answer, and I'm ready to just put a pause on that question because I have nothing in response to that because I love it so much.
All right. How about from Candy-Coated Antacid?
Awesome.
Great name, by the way.
Yeah.
Both of us
I love
suffering from acid reflux.
My
Like
my
this,
Nexium supply is out in the car.
Yeah, this that name tracks, as the kids would say. I don't know if the kids actually say that, but this says, this is going to be a little bit related to our jobs. Candy-Coated Antacid asks, do either of you have any standout stories of what made you want to teach? And any stories of students who maybe made you change your teaching strategies or made you realize you'd chosen the right career?
I think we need to break that into multiple questions.
Yeah, let's start with the first part. Standout stories of what made you want to teach.
So for me, this is going to be a weird story. My whole life, so like I had the state capitals for the U.S. memorized when I was 5 years old.
Oh, cool.
And so everybody in my family was so obsessed with the fact that I had the state capitals memorized that they started saying to me, you're going to be a great history teacher someday. So like in a way, I feel like my destiny was almost written for me at a very young age. Like people my whole life were like, "Oh, you're so personable. You've got this nice social personality. You like historical factoids and tidbits." So like in a way, I feel like my life path was almost preordained by the people around me who, sort of pushed me in a certain direction instead of like exposing me to many different career paths. Like I don't really know anything else at this point because so much of what I do was told to me, you're going to be such a great XYZ from a young age. And another thing that really stands out to me is like whenever I got into like punk music, I started learning a lot from the songs. And then I started like, I obviously bought like people's history and stuff like that. And I got really into that. And I was like, I didn't learn any of this. My teachers were so bad. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be such a better teacher than them. And so part of it was like people pushing me in a certain path that they felt I would have been good at.
Mm-hmm.
And then another part of it is like spite. Like, oh, I'm so angry at these teachers who only taught me this one view of U.S. history. And then once I got into teaching, I realized that I wanted to be an English teacher way more. So I went back and I retook the certification exams for English language arts, and I started becoming an English teacher instead, which I then transitioned into in 2013 from social studies. So I started off in social studies and then switched over when I realized that I was like, I'm way more into like the morals and lessons and ideas of novels and literature than I am about teaching like, U.S. history or world history. So I switched over when I realized that my path and my passions lay elsewhere. And I didn't regret that at all.
Greg, I have, I guess, two teachers who come to mind from high school for me. One was just because of who they were as a person, Mr. Malloy, who taught government.
Mm-hmm.
And, I spent a lot of time before and after class and sometimes during class just reading novels. And he was the only person who ever really asked me what I was reading
Mm-hmm.
and seemed genuinely interested. And that's sort of kind of positive but normal conversation with an adult, I was somewhat caught off guard by.
Oh, cool.
And so because of that, I think I put the book down and started paying attention to him quite a bit more.
Yeah.
But then bummer because he had a student teacher. So then
Then you lost him.
Yeah. Then the rest of the 8 weeks were spent with the student teacher.
Yeah.
And then the other example I think is a teacher who taught a history of war class. And I think the facts, the dates, the stories, what I would refer to more or less as the trivia of, say, the Civil War or the War of 1812, I just found to be fascinating.
Yeah.
And this teacher knew that, Mr. Fields from Maryville High School, knew that really well. And I thought, wow, this is just super interesting. And I guess I never really heard this information so in depth and with such authority. So by the time I got to the middle of my senior year, I started really thinking, okay, what am I going to do? My parents pretty much told me I had to go to college, even though I had no plan to. I thought I can just sit in my room and listen to Opeth and play Turok and Nintendo 64 for the next 10 years. So I guess I was like, well, I really like my social studies classes.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll be a social studies teacher. That's literally the amount of thought I put into it.
Yeah.
And I remember taking classes at IU, and right before I was going to start my observations and start eventually my own student teaching, I was like, what have I done?
Yeah.
What have I gotten myself into? I'm not prepared.
Yeah.
I don't know how to manage a classroom.
Yeah.
I don't know this content. I don't know anything about grading. I don't know about motivation. What about procedures? I started really second guessing myself and thinking, why didn't I do, something else? So what's interesting about Mr. Fields is that while he knew the content and he made it interesting in a very trivial way, I realize now that actually that's not how I want to teach. And even if that's what got me into it with the information, it wasn't really skills based, and it wasn't rooted in any sort of analytical work or comparative work where we look at two different texts, two different perspectives of a historical event, various primary and secondary sources. So while at first I kind of was more like lecture-y because that's what people know.
Yeah, and that's what you were modeled as your whole life. That's you teach the way you were taught.
Right.
Yeah.
And over the last 5 years, right now, I want to say that that's really mostly of how I'm teaching, because with my classroom spread out because of social distancing, with so few students in the classroom, for safety and for protocol, and on top of also teaching online, I don't know how to do what I normally do, which is far more group and small partner work.
Yeah.
I try to, I still incorporate a ton of, again, primary and secondary document and that sort of analytical work. But that had to develop over time.
Sure.
For the longest time, I didn't even give tests. All I did was assess through writing.
Mm-hmm.
And how I even gave tests changed because I didn't really believe in giving a summative, memorize all the information in the study guide and then give it back to me. What's the point of that?
Right.
The only reason I would give a test like that is to knowing that students will take that in high school
Yeah.
and to prepare them for high school where if they don't pass that class, then they don't get the credit.
Yeah.
So
and we're sitting in your classroom right now, and these desks are super far apart, and it's set up very nicely, but this is definitely not conducive to messy collaboration right now. You know what I mean? So I'm sure that what's real, I'd imagine that's so weird for you right now, like honing these new collaborative skills over the last like decade, and then going back to your first original style of teaching. It's got to be super jarring.
Greg, I've apologized to my students.
I'm sure you have
numerous times.
They deserve it though. They deserve to know.
Yeah, I'm like, hey, I know this is not what's best and most engaging.
Yeah,
but I just don't know how else to do this.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's really tough because you know, and I'm sure that, you know, as a teacher, you build a reputation for a certain style of teaching within your building. Like people are like, oh, you're going to have Mr. So, no, he's going to do this, he's going to do that, and you're going to love it so much. But like, I'm thinking about all the things I would do in my like religious studies class with seniors a couple of years ago back in Missouri. And I wouldn't be able to do almost any of it right now. I wouldn't be able to do any guest speakers. I wouldn't be able to do any site visits. I wouldn't be able to do any like, you know, reading groups, small reading groups over things like the Quran or like the Guru Granth Sahib or the Tao Te Ching. I wouldn't be able to do any of that. And I'm like, holy smokes, I would have had to start from scratch this year as far as like how I would teach my favorite class I've ever taught.
Yeah, I will say I am stoked that next week we're doing a virtual field trip to Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's plantation, where we're going to Skype with staff members at Monticello who will take us like through the house. They're going to talk about slavery and the lives of enslaved people there and how they interacted with, you know, the Jefferson family. So there are those opportunities, but I think just balancing everything else on top of having a 3-month-old at home on top of teaching online. There seems to be a limit on those extra things that I'm
There's a ceiling to the creativity that you can do. You know, I'm really curious to hear about that field trip too after you do it, because I went to Monticello and Mount Vernon 2 summers ago, and I took my daughter on both of those trips with me. And you know, I'm visually remembering my Monticello visit with my own kid a couple years ago and explaining to her why the houses out back were the way they were.
Right.
So I'm curious to hear like where they take you on that virtual trip.
They're great. Yeah. The staff there, they hit slavery head on.
Yeah.
They don't apologize for things. They will not try to make excuses.
Sure.
And
they're really good.
Yeah, and they get a ton of pushback.
Yeah.
From boomer tourist visitors who say, why do you got to talk about slavery all the time? Well, you can't talk about a house that was built by enslaved people, managed by enslaved people, run by enslaved people, right? How do you go through this house and not address the lives of the people who made that possible and sustainable?
What's candy coated antacid's second question?
It is any stories of students who maybe made you change your teaching strategies?
Dude, there was this one kid that I taught my first year of teaching English that challenged me so much, and I'm going to refrain from saying his name, but that dude couldn't believe it when I acknowledged that I disagreed with the standardized tests from the school district. He couldn't believe it when I openly questioned the validity of the rubric that I was scoring on. And I was like, these are the things that I'm required to score you on. And I was like openly acknowledging trouble that I had with what I was being asked to do. And he was like, I can't believe you're saying this right now. This is the most amazing thing ever. And he was a really hard student for me to teach. And I think he got like a C- or something. But that one kid taught me more about life than most other kids. And I still keep in touch with him on social media. But I can't really explain the ways that he changed me other than to affirm that he was like digging my honesty Do you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
he's the one who who sort of like made me feel like I was onto something whenever I was like being critical of my own work. Do you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
like you're a teacher, you work super hard, you make a plan, you make a fancy presentation, you like really tweak your assignments and everything, and you feel really good about yourself. But like I never felt good about myself. Like I walked out of school every day being like, I failed on this way, I failed on this thing, I failed on this thing, and I would walk out being like, I did 95% garbage and 5% good.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like the one who was like giving me good feedback on like what sucked. He would just like straight up tell me, I hated this. This was horrible today. And then I would like think about that. Like, all right, I agree with him. That actually was kind of horrible. How can I do a little better? So I look for the ones who are very honest with me about like what was awesome and what was lousy. And I kind of latch onto those kids that are just like brutally honest because I feel it internally. Like when I fail something in the classroom, I look for the kids who tell it to me straight.
Yeah, and it's a lot of time that's really hard because if the students enjoy your class,
Yeah.
the feedback they want to give is just like, "Oh, you're great. Everything was
Yeah,
perfect."
yeah.
But then occasionally someone will be just like, "Yeah, this was okay," and then they give you reasons, and then you realize that's probably the most reliable information rather
Yeah.
than the student who's saying, "I absolutely loved it" or
I
"I
love it."
absolutely hated it." Greg, for that, I don't know if I have a individual in mind, but I can think of how related to what you said, how we were taught is how we teach. I think a lot of that comes back to management as well,
Mm-hmm.
in which management was basically like do what I say, and meeting students kind of by default aggressively,
Yeah.
and being the adult, therefore being right. So my students are really surprised when I apologize.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I say something or if I respond to a student in a way that I immediately know I regret.
Yeah.
Right. If it's my tone
Yep.
or if it's word choice, I will apologize to that student and in front of everyone who might have heard me say something. So I think the different students that I've had who cannot be pushed,
Right.
like the ones who you have to address what they're doing in a way that is not combative,
Mm-hmm.
and realizing, oh, like you can't come at the student hard or they will shut down.
Yep.
Realizing, well, why don't I do that with everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why am I not just as positive as possible? If students don't do the work or if they don't want to engage, that's not as bad as me feeling like making it seem like I decide and control everything, and here's what you have to do, and if you don't do this work, you're not welcome here.
Mm-hmm.
It's far more important that I am a positive presence, that I enjoy what I'm doing, that I am not seated behind my desk,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm engaging them as much as possible, not aggressively,
Right.
and not responding to students in a way that just reflects my emotion. So I think those students who really had trouble with that, whether they had an emotional label, if they had a 504 or an IEP, if like the student actually had a disability, or they were just a student that would shut down.
Yeah.
I think that made me realize the bigger picture of
Mhm.
doing the best I can to de-escalate and to lift people up as much as possible.
Yeah, and when I'm thinking about like the students who like take the orders well, who take the instructions well, are historically the students who have gotten A's in the class.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And how problematic all of that is as
Right.
well.
Absolutely.
So anyway, we just want to think about like what kind of thinkers we're helping to foster and cultivate as people in a classroom, and as people who care about people, not just as people who like teaching, as people who like human beings in general. What kind of future do I want to be a part of? Do I want to be a part of a future where everybody just yells at everybody and orders each other around? Because I was a yeller my first couple of years. Dude, I was a yeller.
The same.
And I remember one time in England, I was teaching, and I was having a bad time, man. And they have different ability tracks in England that are very explicitly ranked. And one time I had a class, and I think I said something along the lines of, oh my God, it was so horrible. It's so embarrassing to say, but this is real, like real stuff. Like when you're a 25-year-old teacher and you're super overwhelmed by 30 kids in a room and you have no control over what is happening at all. I said, what kind of parents do you have? Or something like that. And one girl said, how dare you?
Yeah.
And I was immediately so ashamed to my core that I had said that. And she was totally right. And it was one of those things where we had like, I slumped back in my chair and I was just useless for the rest of the class. And I could have like curled up and died right there.
Yeah. I think any teacher has had those moments where they have to reevaluate.
Oh, dude,
and
you start sweating out the top of your head. Oh, God.
And that's a good thing, too, that you stop and think, and you're not the teacher who continues to do those things without that self-awareness.
I was instantly ashamed.
Right.
Like, with every fiber of my existence that I had resorted to such a low blow in a moment where I had no control over what was happening in the classroom.
Yeah.
Hate it.
Well, the last part of that, Greg, says, how about any stories or examples that made you realize you'd chosen the right career?
I still am curious what I want to do when I grow up and 37. But anyway, so I really like what I'm doing right now. I'm teaching fully online, and it's really great. I have a lot of writing responsibilities where I'm like writing a lot of curriculum and things like that. So I'm really enjoying the diversity of experiences that I've had within teaching. I taught in Mexico. I did my master's in Canada. I taught in England. I taught in Missouri. I taught in New York. I've taught fully online. I've had experiences in South America, in Brazil. And I am just really, really grateful that I chose a profession that allows me experiences and, the ability to experience a lot of what this world has to offer in such a short period of time. Like I only graduated in 2006 and like I've done so many things since then. It's just remarkable.
My story that comes to mind, Greg, sounds a little self-back patty, so I don't mean to be like self-congratulatory, but I taught in Gary, Indiana, which you drove through for 2 years, and it was an at-risk community. It was a very high-needs community. I learned more in those 2 years than I did in my 4 years at Indiana University studying to be a teacher. And I ended up taking another job in nearby East Chicago, Indiana, which is also high poverty, high crime, at-risk students. And it was not a good fit for me. I ultimately decided to leave about a month and a half in 2012. And
Wow.
I just felt like I felt rudderless.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I was going to be a teacher anymore.
Yeah.
It was the first time I had ever really given up on something major, like thinking that I had lived for 2 years in Ukraine as a Peace Corps volunteer, that I had made it through that, but not a month and a half of teaching in East Chicago.
Wow.
And there were a number of factors that it wasn't a fit, but I kind of had given up, right?
Wow.
I realized that I gave up, and I had to walk away from that position. And so I was very much not sure what I wanted to do. And then a friend of mine said, there's a maternity leave position at Highland Middle School, and which is where I teach now. So I started working here. I taught 7th grade social studies for like 3 months, and then I subbed.
Yeah.
And then I subbed, and I did other maternity leaves for English, for math, for other social studies classes. And I see a lot of times teachers will say things like, well, I don't want you to like me. I want you to respect me.
Yeah, that's so lame.
Which is nonsense.
It's so boring.
I want my students to like me.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in like we're friends.
Right.
And I'm going to do things to impress you. But I want them to like my class, to feel safe, to feel appreciated, to be celebrated in that way. So I want to clarify because the word like can be somewhat loaded. But there's this one specific incident that I still get goosebumps thinking about it. When I finally was offered and had a full-time position, this position here, after working here for almost 2 years part-time and subbing and maternity leave, I had to go to the high school, which is actually connected to my building. So the students that I had for the previous 2 years subbing were freshmen. So I had to go to a meeting at the high school, and as I was walking to that meeting, there was a group of students who were like waiting to go to lunch or something, and then they saw me and they're like, "Oh, Mr. Goff." And Greg, I'm not joking. They all started screaming my name, like, "Mr. Goff." And everyone started like screaming and clapping. There were teachers coming out of their classrooms like, "What's going on out here?" Thinking there's a fight. And I'm like, "People, keep it down. Hi, hello, how are you?" It's good because I hadn't seen them in a while. And that felt so reaffirming that when I walk throughout my town, that former students will like offer to give me a ride home, that they wave to me at the grocery store. That makes me feel like, okay, if they don't remember the treaty that ended the War of 1812 or, who won the Battle of Antietam, like none of that matters if at least they remember that there's, adults out there who root for their success, who want them to do well, who were as often as possible, because I, like you, have had plenty of missteps, can be as positive as possible. And that moment really made me feel like I was in a bad position before. It wasn't a good fit. I had shut down. It was just not a good match as a whole. But here was like, okay, so maybe I am supposed to be a teacher, but this is just a far better atmosphere and environment for it.
And I'd imagine that your students who see you walking around town will be like, "That's a guy who cared about me," which is awesome. But also the I don't know if people can appreciate the power of the teaching contract of the year and how important that is when you sign a contract for the upcoming school year. At so many jobs, people switch jobs fast, right? You can like transfer between different businesses, different corporations, like at the drop of a hat. A lot of people can transfer jobs extremely quickly and with great ease between different companies. But when you sign a teaching contract for a first day of meetings to the end of school, if you leave in that period of time, you are taking the most gigantic professional risk.
Right.
Because if people see a partial school year on a resume, if you're a hiring administrator and you see a partial school year on a resume, your first question is, tell me about this. Why did you leave in October when you had a contract until May, right? That's a big deal. And so the fact that you were able to recalibrate and, find another path after taking that massive risk doesn't happen for everybody, man.
Yeah, I got lucky, Greg. I got lucky. So a somewhat related question. This is from Jake Dietrich. He asked, how do you guys balance your professions, your personal life, and your podcast? Do you find the pandemic has made that easier or more challenging?
I balance badly. I do my best. So for the podcast, I have two. The Classical Ideas podcast has gotten significantly easier over time as I've gotten better at that, and I've kind of like found my niche within that show. And this show, what I try to do is I try to look up something every day in relation to propaganda songs. So I do it a tiny little bit at a time. So I dole out my workload for this show in like 20-minute bursts, like 5 days in a row leading up to the show. With my kiddo, she's doing virtual school and stuff like that. But I would say the pandemic has made doing both shows and having a job, it's very possible for me. Because I essentially go nowhere ever. The fact that I'm 500 miles or whatever from my house right now is utterly insane because I really haven't left the Buffalo suburban area since last February. And so the fact that like I'm far away right now, I was thinking about this. I was like, man, if I'm traveling for work this week and I'm going to be in the car a ton, I'm going to be checking work emails and doing work stuff whenever I get a chance to be online. And I'm like, oh my God, we might not actually get an episode out every week this month because like this is thrown such a huge wrench into my normal routine, and I needed it, man. I had to get out of town for a little bit, so I'm really grateful. But like being home all the time has made this project in life possible. But I think that if I was like traveling more or working more, that this would be so much harder. So
And I've already said a bunch on Twitter that Greg does so much for the show between editing, doing the interviews, setting up interviews, that I have a pretty minimal workload that I carry in comparison. So, and I say this to thank Greg for
Oh.
everything that he's done for this podcast, because it really would not be like, if you enjoy it and you think it's good and you want to keep listening. I would say that the majority of that is because of Greg's work.
Well, I appreciate that. It's been an obsession, essentially. And, you know, I take criticism and critique very, very hard. I was on like one of the internet groups around propaganda, and they're like, yeah, those guys just like basically read the Wikipedia articles for songs. And I'm like, that is so completely not true. And if I respond to that, I'm going to be down an internet rabbit hole that I don't want to go down.
Yeah.
But like, we have worked super hard on this show. Like I take a lot of pride in what we're doing. I think that this is so much fun, and I learn something new every single week. And I feel so lucky that we took this on. But it's been it's a big lift, and
Right.
I know I tell you often when we're off air recording, when I say, tell your wife thank you so much for letting me borrow you for a couple hours every week, because I know that this is a hard time. You know, raising young kiddos is no joke, and the fact that she lets me borrow you for a bit here and there is my sincerest gratitude goes out to her for sure.
Well, Greg, you mentioned the pressure, and this is someone else's artwork, their lyrics, their music.
Yeah.
So there is an incredible amount of pressure to, I don't know if get it right or not terribly wrong,
Sure.
or at least do it justice.
Yeah.
And I hope that I have as much as possible. I think that we've released a few episodes to where maybe I regretted some things that I said that perhaps came off a little bit too jokey or perhaps too critical, or I even changed my idea of what the song meant. You might remember my write-up following Failed Imagineer, in which Greg shared on Instagram and I shared on Twitter some thoughts I had in terms of like rethinking the song. But yeah, there is an incredible amount of pressure, and then related to that, there's an incredible amount of pressure to get things right in my classroom, to talk about women throughout U.S. history, and indigenous peoples, and enslaved people, and how these various threads of history can be seen in different ways in the present. I'm not saying that history repeats itself, but there are direct correlations to events in the past that are often ignored, overlooked, or oversimplified. So I don't see, my job as a teacher like as, all right, we're going to learn these dates and memorize these vocab terms, and that's the goal, right? And having just essentially a mental timeline of U.S. history, but a set of skills that will apply to everything else in life, whether that's reading the news or seeing a post on social media, to analyzing what a faith leader or a politician says, hoping to impart skills that they will be able to use outside of my classroom in high school or elsewhere. So I mostly think I don't do enough, and I know I don't do enough, that there's no way to address all of the current events happening, from gun violence to voter restriction and repression, to the laws passed discriminating against people who are transgender and denying their identities and their access to healthcare. I think all of those things, there's never enough time for me to talk about that while addressing all of the important events in history that I think will help them understand the present. So there really isn't a balance.
Yeah.
And I think I really struggle with that, kind of like you said. And I think that the load that you have carried has helped a ton. I hope that, that obviously, like, far more prioritizing my classroom and, time with my wife. She also knows that this has been a project that has been really important to me, that it's been a release in some ways, that it has allowed me to connect with you, but also with just so many other people, whether that's via conversation, an interview, or just on social media.
Yeah.
That I'm a really social person, and the first 3 or 4 months of the pandemic and staying at home were hard.
Brutal.
They were really, really hard for
Yeah.
me. I'm used to going to concerts. I'm used to hanging out with friends, meeting up after school on Friday for a drink with coworkers. I work with my best friend of 31 years.
Wow.
32 years. And the fact that, I've seen him outside of school once in the last year
Yeah.
has been really hard. So I think she knows that I needed something else to kind of help me manage what I wasn't getting otherwise. But, now with having a son, like, we're here in my classroom, and he's been having a pretty hard time being able to nap consistently, to eat without getting upset, and for my wife to be at home, possibly with the, it almost feels like Russian roulette every time we put him down for a nap. We don't know if he'll sleep for 2.5 hours, or if he's going to wake up inconsolable 30 minutes later and just cry for an hour.
Yeah.
And that's a lot to put on her, to be at home, by herself. So she and I might see the balance being different.
Yeah.
I'm sure she would be justified, and rightfully so, far more critical of that balance. But yeah, I don't know. That seemed to be a meandering
It's fine.
answer. That maybe there is no way, but it's brought you and I know an incredible amount of joy.
Yeah.
A ton of opportunity. The fact that we've been able to talk to scholars and historians, musicians, fellow fans, band members themselves, is something that, January of 2020, I never would have thought that this would have happened and that people would like it.
I know. It's crazy. And, there is a huge opportunity cost with doing a project like this, though.
Yeah.
Like, we spend so much time on this that I could be doing a second job,
Right.
earning like another, I don't know, $1,500, $2,000 a month.
Right.
So, like, there is a huge opportunity cost that comes with doing stuff like this. And I'm just grateful that people care, because I think that if no one had liked it, that obviously I would have reassessed my priorities and gone in a different route maybe after a while. So I'm just glad that people listen and enjoy it, because time is so finite. The time we're here on Earth is so short, and I'm just glad that we enjoy doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. How about we'll end with, like, a funny question here, Greg.
Okay.
Ryan and Nash asks,
Oh, hey, Ryan.
why hasn't Prop covered Spirit of Radio by Rush yet?
That's a great question, and I would definitely listen to it if they did.
Well, I'll follow up with one more then. Can you think of a song that Propaganda hasn't covered that you would like to hear them cover?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'll do one. I want to hear a Propaganda cover of No Means No
Ooh, that's good.
so badly. 2 lips, 2 lungs, 1 tongue would be a great one. I think The River would be an amazing one. Kill Everyone Now would be a fantastic one. And then you also have The Hawk Killed the Punk on All Roads Lead to Ausfart, which is sort
Yeah.
of alluded to in Hadron Collision. So I think that would be a really cool project as well for Propaganda to cover a No Means No song.
I have 2 really unusual ideas. And
Love it.
I know the first, Chris Hannon would say absolutely not.
Okay.
But a crossover idea with like covering a Public Enemy song.
Ooh, interesting.
Knowing that he's a fan
He is, yeah.
of Public Enemy, I think if it were the right song, and the context and the lyrics worked with Propaganda,
Sure.
Singing them, I think that could be super fun.
Amazing.
But also something like then the opposite end of that sliding scale or spectrum, something originally folky but equally as political, something like a song from like Pete Seeger.
Dude, I was thinking Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. But so Pete Seeger or Phil Oakes or some sort of like, politically minded.
Woody Guthrie.
Yeah, exactly. Like a traditional song like that.
Man, a Pete Seeger one would be so great. It'd be kind of interesting to hear maybe a Tom Petty cover as well. I think that could be kind of neat.
Especially with how much like Americana,
Yep.
right? American identity, but somewhat turning it on its head.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, we got some good choices there. I like it. Are there any more questions?
I think that wraps us up.
All right. Well, Keith, this has been such a pleasure.
This is great.
Being with you in your environment here in this classroom. I'm just looking around and I'm sort of picturing a lot of my old classrooms in the past and like the ways that, people decorate their classrooms and the way they surround themselves with so many hours of their week. It's really wonderful. So it's just a pleasure to be here, and I'm super grateful to you for hosting me today, and that we get to finally have a real conversation in person after spending more than 5,000 minutes together
Oh my God.
on the internet this past year. So it's just been so awesome, and thank you to everybody who's submitted questions. It's just such a joy. And if you want to email us, you can do it at propagandapod@gmail.com. And you can find us on Instagram or Twitter at propagandapod. And we'll be back with a song next time. I'm traveling right now, so we're not really sure what the episode output is going to be this month. But like I said online, obviously, we'll do our very best. And thank you, everybody, if you got this far in this conversation. You literally just heard the first conversation Keith and I have ever had in person just now, which is, wow. Okay, signing off.